Ladies and gentlemen, my warmest greetings to the participants and speakers of this TRAC International Conference with the theme Unleashing Resilient Leaders. I am very glad to be part of this community of scholars moving forward, trying to make a difference so that everybody will get interested in research and everybody will yearn to read research, utilize research, and make it a vitamin for our collective community and national life. I would like to share to you two things today. The first one being how to translate research to action, and second, how to translate research into concepts. So, in about 40 minutes, I'll try my best to share to you as intimately as possible what have I learned from 30 years of experience as a practicing researcher and as a mentor to other researchers. Let's take the first case of how to translate research into action. In the first place, we are dealing here with what we call as applied research, where the main purpose of the study is to define the problem and find out how this problem has adversely affected the community and the society at large, and what have already been done via research to solve this problem, and what were the concerted efforts of individuals and groups to address the problem. And given these two distinct approaches to solve the problem, what remains the weakness? What remains the gray area that needs to be addressed? So we call that as the research gaps. So therefore, you want to do research in order that an action can proceed from the results of the study, that is applied research. Let me tell you about certain weaknesses in the culture of research in the Philippines today. And that is the whole study is finished up to the recommendations, and only then would the researchers walk the mile to convince the stakeholders about the results of their study. That is already too late. So I would like to give you today the technique on how to make sure that your results and your recommendations will be acceptable into action. Okay. First is this thing called stakeholders engagement. Since the conception of the study, title pa lang ng study that you want to figure out, you should already be able to map out who are your stakeholders. So stakeholders normally are the following. One is they could be policymakers, such as regulatory bodies, they could be legislative bodies, or they could be the policy bodies of institutions like board of directors, board of trustees. All right. Then from the policymakers, we go to the implementers. Okay, they are the implementers of the programs that are intended to ameliorate the problem being researched on. And then they could be the scholarly community, which would help make sure that the results of the study could be published. And then another one is the stakeholders could be the end beneficiaries, the people, the man on the street in a particular community who would need to be uplifted in their actual conditions. So those are your stakeholders. There could be more on the macro level for that, okay, which we can illustrate a little later. But let's just figure it out that they could be your simple stakeholders. So let me strike a simple illustration. There was a study on the water crisis of a town, that the amount of water being distributed to users um, by the water district is not enough for the consumption daily of the needs of the citizens. All right. So, title pa lang, you would already, as a researcher, visit the water district office and inquire about demand and supply, whether there are gaps, whether there are problems of the pipes, or whether there is a need for expansion. And then on their end, as water district personnel, how do they think they are addressing the problem? So that is one. Then another, you can go to the municipal office and talk to the chair committee on environment and natural resources. Okay, because that person is in charge of legislation, whether there have been local legislations already being done to address the water crisis, because all problems in society are supposed to be the lookout of government, and all problems of the community are the lookout of the local legislative and the executive bodies. Then after that, what could be the long-term solution for the water crisis? And then from the explanation that, the water is not enough, even if you put in more pumping wells, no, pumping stations, the water is just not enough. And so you go to a larger body, which we call the DNR, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And there, they would tell you that there is a need to create a functional and robust um, watershed, and so there's a need to plant trees on certain portions of the mountain, because that will ensure a long-term sustainable solution to the water crisis. So you have not done anything yet. You only have a topic which is about the water crisis. And then from there, you go into the the prelate or the Catholic Church priest, and then you ask him about the water crisis, whether he has done some sermons in the church. All right, and then you also visit about the restaurants that are, water-based services, and then the dormitories that also need water, and then the households. Okay, and then ask them about how they are actually affected by the water problem, and then whether they can validate that indeed there is a need to intensify the efforts to solve the water problem, and what do you think should be the solution, because every stakeholder always has an inquiring and a thinking mind. So ask them about, if they will be asked, what will be their solution to the problem. So title pa lang, buo na yung interview mo on what is the problem, what are the dimensions of the problem, what have been done about the problem, what are the limitations of the problem, what are the dynamics of the problem, and how the problems could be solved. Title pa lang. Then after that, you proceed with the literature. Okay? So you search the literature. Water crisis in the Philippines. Then solutions. Water crisis in the Philippines, strategies. Okay. Water crisis in the Philippines, development plans. And so, from the various experiences of the different parts of the country, how did local governments actually address the issue of water crisis? Yon, no? All right. And then from these experiences in the web, then you migrate to the um, scientific databases like Google Scholar or PubMed, and then you inquire there about what are the theories on the water crisis. All right. Oh, what are the hypotheses on the water crisis? All right. What are studies on the water crisis from the qualitative method, from the quantitative method, from the mixed methods? Then what are the literature reviews on the water crisis in the different parts of the world, to give yourself ample worldview of the dimensions of the problem, although the problem is local, but it has also relatedness to the other parts of the world. Okay, we call that local problems, meaning um, global in relatedness, okay, local in application. Right. It is important that these stakeholders would be identified because you will proceed to step two. After you do your initial interviews, then you will go to step two. What is that? That you move towards the creation or of memorandum of agreements or memorandum of understanding. Okay, for example, if you're a student or a faculty researcher, then necessarily you will have to talk with the chair of the committee on environment and natural resources, and then you ask him about the possibility that he will be the one to endorse the proposed local legislation, because you are not a legislator, so he will be the one to do it, and then ask for a prototype version of the ordinance. How does the ordinance look like? How is it written? How is it structured? So you already have in mind that you are going to follow that when you are going to finalize your results, so that what needs to be done will have to be agreed upon by the chair in the Sangguniang Panglungsod. Okay. So you create a memorandum of understanding between your office and the office of the Sangguniang Panlungsod, chaired by the vice mayor. That is one. Second is that you can also create a memorandum of agreement between your research center or your department, okay, in the major field like your dean or your chair. um, Memorandum of agreement between that office of your school and the water district. Okay. Among the items that will be included in the memorandum of agreement is that they would allow for the research to be conducted, okay, using some of their data and personnel as sources during the interview, and that they would look at the proposal and scrutinize the instrument and give inputs so that the study can benefit from their expertise and experience. And then third, that they will agree that after the results of the study are in and the tables are prepared, that they will be the first people to hear of the results, so that they can also give insights, their understanding, their comprehension, their ideas, in order to flesh out the analysis and interpretation of the data. And then finally, that they would be able to participate collaboratively in the crafting of the recommendations, because the end in view is to make sure that the recommendations will be acceptable on their level and that implementable as well. And then plus their indication that those recommendations that they would accept will be included in their strategic plans, okay, and in their operational plans, complete with dates when will this be included, and finally the budgetary allocation. And then if we can add another provision there, that 6 months after they receive the results of the study, that there will be a tracer, okay, to determine what is the status of the implementation of the recommendations, and whether evidences will be obtained. And then 6 months after, another 6 months, and that would be about 12 months thereafter, that there will be an impact study on the effectiveness of the interventions or the recommendations that they are able to implement because of their participation to the study as the end users of the data. So in that respect, these are items that are actually being prepared before you write the proposal. All right. And then we also have the DNR, no? So for the DNR, okay, you can create a memorandum of agreement between the school president or the director of research with the DNR, that they are going to allow a certain portion of the bald mountains for the permit to replant the trees, and then for their assistance to make sure that the tree species that will be planted would be indigenous and can survive in the local conditions, so that the the uh, watershed will really flourish and become sustainable. And so there would also be a memorandum of understanding between the research center and the office of the community extension, because the planting of trees is no longer the domain of the research center, but the planting of trees could be the domain already of the community extension service office. So you see, there is an MOU, so that during the proposal, if the community extension director is also qualified educationally and meets the requirement of a panelist, he could be invited as a panelist here. And then the manager, the general manager for the water district, if he has the requisite qualifications as well, can be invited as another panelist. Okay. All right. And then the chair of the committee on environment and natural resources, who is the municipal council or local legislator, can also be invited to be part of the research panel. Because you see, normally in the Philippines, there are 5 members in the research panel. I would like to exhort you that out of the 5, only 2 should come from the school. Why? Because the other 3 should be reserved for people who can do something. For example, the legislator will be the third, or the councilor. And then the DNR personnel can be the fourth. Okay. And then who is the fifth? Okay, the manager of the water district. Plus, the dean, who is the chair, and another professor, another teacher within the department, within the school. So that's 2 versus 3. Why? Because we will be guilty of what we call as inbreeding. Imagine, we the faculty are the ones handling the subjects, and then it's the teachers who will be advising the student. The teachers will be the one to, panel, to edit, and then to chair. So what else is new to give as, you know a means to step up the plate? So that's it. You have to start right this way by really establishing this memorandum of agreements, a memorandum of understanding. So, since I am a consultant of several schools in the Philippines and abroad, I make sure that there are assistance, there is some form of assistance coming from the legal counsel office of the school. There is no school that doesn't have a lawyer, actually. So, there is always a lawyer in every school, sometimes two: lawyer to the president, and then lawyer to the board of trustees, or the board of directors, or the board of regents. Okay, so that they would be able to assist in the crafting of this MOU and then MOA. Then I would even exhort that for research purposes, there will be 2 kinds of MOUs or MOAs that will be signed. One is MOU for research. The other one is for community extension. Because the implementation of the results of the study, which is the action of what we are talking here, is not within the domain of research. It is in the domain of the community extension. So any research that you do in the community, if it generates participation of the local people, that is community extension. Because when the accreditors would come, there are 2 sets of people who will be checking on these two. So it will be good. Imagine if there are 100 theses and dissertations in the graduate school generated for a particular year, then there will be 100 MOAs and another 100 MOAs for both research and community extension. That will be very good. Now, with respect to the creation of the proposal, all right. So you have read, you have consulted many people, the experts. For example, you consulted a research expert regarding the quality of your instrument. And then you consulted also an MS or PhD in statistics to check on the uh, correctness and appropriateness of your statistical tools. All right, and then you also consulted content experts, meaning people who have written about the problems of water, for example, in my case that I'm giving you. All right. And the the inputs coming from the municipal councilor and the mayor of the town, because the problem of water crisis is essentially a mayor's number one headache. Okay. So they should be able to see the proposal and input into it. You cannot write a questionnaire and then they will answer and they did not even see that before, right? Okay. So when when you have finished that, they should be able to get hold of the full proposal, including the questionnaire, and then write a notation there, reviewed and approved. Mm. Why is this important? So that they would know what kind of questions are you asking, what sort of data are you collecting, and what sort of actions do you intend to produce later in the future as a result of the study, so that they will no longer reject your results, okay, the moment you give it to them. All right. Now, what has been our experience? We did a study that was funded by CHED, to the tune of 1.5 million, if I remember right. And it was a study about the Cagayan de Oro River. All right. And then including its ecosystem and, the biodiversity, the microbiological aspect of, um, bacteria like E. coli, and then what else was where those identified, salmonella, and then the metal pollution, the industrial pollution, and the economic activities. It's quite a complex study. All right. So during the proposal preparation, we have to go to the Department of Agriculture, particularly for the aquatic division. We have to go to the DNR. We have to go to the DOH. We have to go to the um, Department of Science and Technology. We have to go to CHED. We have to go to uh, the Deep Ed. These are the critical stakeholders. Okay, so that they would be able to approve our questionnaire. And we got so many inputs. They said, no, 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 no. We have data on this. You include this information. We can provide you with this. Why are you only asking this one? In our office, we have this voluminous information. And so we realized that, one way to enrich your materials is not just to go to the library, because every office, every stakeholder has a collection of data, okay, that make them so useful to enrich your particular study. And so uh, our proposal was sort of bringing us confidence because the stakeholders approved them and they really signed. Okay. Now, after that, then comes the data collection and then the assembling of the data and then the systematization of the data, and then, all the tables were prepared. Okay. So we had to go back to them and we said, look, these are our data. And then it said, okay, your water analysis is also similar to ours in the DNR, because we also collect data on that one. You can utilize our results in how many years to confirm your data. So you can just imagine that. Now, uh, they give significant inputs and insights on why things happen the way they do out of the data that we have collected. Then after that, we created what we call as a collaborative a planning workshop in which the representatives of these agencies were convened, okay, together with the end users of the research results, okay, and the legislators, okay. We put them together and we try to make a consensus on what should happen next from here. So what would be the local legislations? Okay, that will be taken care of by the chair for the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Okay, what are the necessary uh, steps in order to make sure that the existing laws, okay, on the river sustainability would be implemented. Okay, so we had to reach out as far as the police. Why? Because nobody will apprehend nor arrest the violators of existing laws if they did not know about these ordinances or these local legislations. So we have to go to them and then make sure that they know about these things, so that eventually, when the third reading is finished for the local legislation, they will be able to apprehend the violators. Okay. Now, that is as far as the recommendations are concerned. All our recommendations were consulted to and then agreed upon in a consensus, okay, by the stakeholders. And then after that, after 6 months, okay, we went back to them to see how things are being implemented on their end. We collected some information, like this information is already being taken up in the meetings. They have been included in the strategic plans. They have been used as inputs into the decision making. We collect whatever little, big evidences that we could find. And then from there, we try to create a story of the initial gains out of that research. And then afterwards, 6 months after, then we try to check on the effectiveness of the interventions or the community programs that were implemented as a result of the study. For example, we were able to discover that uh, one of the sectors that polluted the Cagayan de Oro River are the settlers, the informal settlers on the first 200 meters from the riverbank, because they don't have toilets, and if ever they do, okay, the pipe would empty immediately into the river. So we were able to check on that. And the economic activities that are destructive to the river's ecosystem, they are the ones that do that, right? So we try to organize the women, because the women are the ones that stay at home, and also the out of school youth. We have to organize them and then teach them about this, and the young people who are in school. And you see, scientific results are hardly useful to the people in the community. Who cares about this 3.5 parts per million, or 3.5 most probable number of E. coli content in the river? Who cares about these things from the point of view of the people in the community? So the results of the study, we converted them into what we call as comics or magazines, no? Comics or magazines, illustrated. And we had a contest by college students. We gave them the results of the study, and then we tried to ask them to create a story of, I think, Buknoy, and the other one is Junjun. Uh, these two characters, and then they were playing in the river, and they were bathing in the river, and then they get ill. And so the scientific results were translated into terms that are relatable and understandable to them. And then well, we selected one winner, and we reproduced about 100 copies of those colored. And then we prepared 40 to 50 copies that we brought to the nearest public school along the Cagayan de Oro River. And then we brought the students. Of course, we consulted the principal. We brought the students near the river where there is a big tree, and then they would sit down there, and then we would do storytelling, and then dialogues, and then they would take turns, playing the role of Buknoy, playing the role of Junjun, and then they would laugh and things like that. And then we try to search in the web what is the image of this E. coli. So it looks like rambutan as a fruit. Okay, and so who has seen these bacteria? They are very small. So we use the image of the E. coli as part of the design of the T-shirt, and then the caps, and so they would know that that's how the bacteria looks like. And then when it gets into the body, this is what is going to happen to me. I will get sick, and eventually I will die, right? And so we told them about river conservation, and then we asked them to inform their parents that it is not good to defecate in the river. It is not good to do this and to do that, because the children listen to the parents, because they send that the um no the parents will listen to the children, because the children are credible as far as the parents are concerned. So the waste management concept, no, all right, was actually implemented side by side with the cooperation of the elementary schools, because it became a project of their, what was that? Earth Saver Society, all right, that they are going to implement the waste management system in the household level. You can just imagine that. So this is an example of action, right? All right. So after that, there was already local legislation. What happened was we could not find evidence that people who violated the local ordinances were apprehended. So I came up with this crazy idea. We went to the police station and then we asked them if they could patrol and then find people who are violating, and then we would give them a price of 500 pesos per apprehension that they are going to do. Mhm. Imagine, so desperate to be able to get results, no? Because unless one or two or three or five people are arrested or apprehended or given fines, okay, there is no truth that indeed we have a law. Because a law that is no that that is not implemented in a way that those who violate you will be given punishment, it's not a law in the real sense of the word. Okay. So I have given you an idea that indeed the presence of these institutional arrangements, the Memorandum of Understanding and the Memorandum of Agreement, both in the offices of research and the office also of the community extension, are vital ingredients to make sure that the actions through the recommendations will be accepted, implemented, utilized, and tracked down for their effectiveness of implementation and impact to the local community. Okay. Now, at this point in time, I would like to give you a particular experience of one of my client schools. I am a consultant of the St. Michael College of Caraga. And then one of the best features of this school, it's actually a small college in the town of Nasipe, Tagusan del Norte. No? And the school is a Catholic school owned by the Diocese of Butuan. All right. So I suggested to them that since they have a radio station, yes, they have a commercial radio station. All right, owned by the school. It started as an educational radio station, and then after 2 years, they calibrated the license to commercial so that they can earn and regain back their investment through the advertisements. Okay. Now, we made a policy in this school that when the students are finished in their final oral defense, mula sa senior high up to the college level because they don't have the graduate school, all the groups and individuals who made theses, okay, will be scheduled for a 5-minute interview, okay, by the manager of the radio station. So the director for research, and then the principal of senior high, and then the different groups, would go to the radio station and discuss just three things. Okay, one is that what is it that they wanted to discover, or what was the problem they tried to solve. Okay, second, what results did they get, and then third is how can the recommendations be implemented. What actions are needed to improve the problems or to improve the conditions in the municipality. Just three. And then we told them do not speak English because a radio station is intended for the mass base of the population, those who are educated or not educated. And then we gave them instructions like when it is your turn, when it is your schedule, you tell your parents to tune in, you tell your neighbors, and then when you arrive home, you ask them about the experience, and then you discuss it with them, and um, write a paper on that, and that is a reaction, and then it becomes an essay, and then we are going to uh, identify the top 10 best written reactions for that. Okay. So it created ripples. Why? Because not only the town of Nasipot is benefited, but also the province of Camiguin Island. Because, the signal of the radio will reach there. And also including Butuan City and some portions of Surigao. Because you see across the sea from Agusan del Norte na Sipit, you can see the outline of Surigao, no? So we were able to do that. The universities, public and private and the local, did not do that. We have not even heard whether UP Ateneo Lasal did that for their senior high. You know? Okay. It was senior high and then college at that. Okay. So what was the impact? The local community knew about the studies. Why? Because Now, let's have a real talk. Who knows about the studies that are produced by teachers and students, right? In the case of thesis, okay, only the student researchers in the group, their advisor, and 3 or 5 panelists. Now, let me challenge you. Hypothetically, if you are going to put all these people in a van and by force majeure, or, by accident, the van falls into the ravine and everybody will die, who else knows about the study? No one, right? No one. And so we need to we need to create a mechanism by which the larger community can learn about, the results of research. Okay, right? Mm. So radio dissemination is important. Okay. Now, for the second part, I can talk about it very briefly. It has to do with concept. How can research results, translate into concept? One is that when you do research, think also of a creative way by which you can coin new words or new vocabularies. Like, for example, the word local. No, it was coined by one person, and then there is a meaning. It came from a research. Climate change, the word change, the word climate, and then they are fused together. It became one concept. That's climate change. Green economy, the word green, and then another word is economy. Then you fuse that, it becomes a concept. And then you try to create, an operational definition of that particular new words that you coined. Okay. And then you open an account with Wikipedia, and then you input that in Wikipedia so that it can be edited, and if you follow the rules, then they will accept that. So when people will be able to search for that term that you have coined, okay, they will find that in the Wikipedia because you have an account in Wikipedia. You are not a good researcher or educator if you don't have an account in Wikipedia. Okay, so there, Wikipedia. And then with the new terms that you have coined, you can also publish that, di ba? Put that as part of a paper that you are going to publish. Once it gets published, it becomes online. Once it is online, then it becomes, accessible by the rest of the world. So in this respect, those new terms or new concepts that you have created will become a byword, will become a buzzword, right? And then everybody will be able to use that. And then, uh, for example, climate change. If you're going to go to Google, who wrote first on climate change, then you will be able to find who is really that person who created the term first. Okay, so that's one way. The second one is, this is a little bit complicated, but I'll make it simple for you. When you do qualitative research, okay, you will be able to draw experiences that are raw, comprehensive, and then very clear. And then you will be able to, um, draw in, you know, perceptions of people, meanings of people about certain issues. And then from there, you create what we call as a questionnaire from the qualitative data. Let me give you as an illustration. A friend of mine, Dr. Rogelio Bayod, who is a professor from Corieso College of Digos, is a research teacher. And then one of the groups of students did a study on, um, it's a qualitative study entitled Rising from the Ashes. Okay, the lived experiences of we of girls who got pregnant while in college. Okay. And so they expressed how it happened that they became pregnant. Okay. And then counterbalance, there was also a study on those who impregnated them, because it's not good to study only the victim, but also the perpetrator. No. Okay. So the boys who impregnated them were also studied. And then, I asked him, paano ba nabuntis yung mga estudyante? Nagplano ba talaga sila na pag mag-date sila, gawa sila ng bata? Hindi. They said no. Uh, they started with holding hands and, in public places, and eventually in a little dimmer places. And then, it escalated somewhere. And then before they know it, they did it already. Okay? And so I said, napakaganda ng data mo, because actually I published the study in my journal. And then I said, sir, Why don't you go back to this data and then create uh, indicators as sentences, and then create a questionnaire that will measure the level of intimacy that the students have already undergone. Like, for example, how many of them, had eye to eye, and then, and then holding hands. How many of them have, yung mag-akbay-akbay sila. How many of them yung, yung kamay ng isa napunta doon sa bewang ng isa. How many of them are kissing in the cheeks, in the noo, and then in the lips. And how many of them actually had premarital sex. And then, so that by means of that questionnaire, we would know who are already vulnerable. Okay? Kasi sa mga buntis na, wala tayong magagawa doon. Hindi natin pwedeng ibalik ang bata doon sa sinapupunan. Right? Pero yung mga nagsisex na sila, we can do something about that na hindi magbunga. So, para hindi masira yung kinabukasan nila. Okay, yun. And so the questionnaire was actually outlined. And so I said, sir, you create validity write up for this validation of the instrument. How was it done? And then you compute the reliability. Okay, so depende sa technology ninyo na yung kaalaman, you can use coefficient alpha, and then eventually exploratory factor analysis, and then pag may time ka pa, gawan mo ng confirmatory factor analysis so that the instrument, the questionnaire can be published. So it was done, it was published. So from the perceptions of people, drawn from their experiences, nagiging concept, no? Nagiging idea siya. And then when the concept or idea was actually measured by indicators, okay, it's no longer a concept. You're elevating concept to the level of construct, okay, which is a variable, no? Okay, so I said use that in another study with a wider sampling frame using scientific sampling technique, and then kumuha ka lang ng mga drivers or mga predictors or determinants or correlates that will, induce, these things to happen. What are certain variables that predispose people towards, higher levels of intimacy? Yon. Yanon. To make the long story short, from the ideas of people, it became a questionnaire and it became a construct. And other researchers, because I sent it to many people who would like to have a study similar to that, so it became already a popular instrument that are utilized by schools so that they will be able to determine who among their first year, second year, third year, and fourth and fifth year students already are vulnerable in terms of deeper sexual relations, even without the benefit of marriage, because they're still students. Okay? So that's it. All right. So I gave you two views on how to translate research into action and how to translate research into concept. Okay? And given the limited time, that is only what I can share. Okay. And intimately, I would say thank you for the golden opportunity that you allowed and invited me in this conference. Because to all of you, only you collectively have completed me today. I feel like I matter because you made me feel I do. If you want more of my explanations, you can email me at hinarohapos@gmail.com, or you can actually text me globe 091770 35283, and I will answer your questions. If you need some resources for your research, or if you are teaching research, and then I have plenty of those resources which I generated myself, I will give it to you. Okay? And then utilize them, because that is my gift to humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And at this juncture, I would like to pay homage to the person who invited me, Dr. Lon Maglipas, for the brilliance of helping create an event like this. And also my afternoon greetings to the other keynote speakers who are equally gifted in their field and who are giving you a part of their precious time so that you can grow into the fullness of creation that the Lord has planned for you. Great day, mabuhay. This is Sinaro Hapos saying goodbye.